Okay, did you get the opening of the meeting to begin with? Okay, what we'll do, I'm gonna start at the beginning. Yeah. I'd like to call to order the October 28, 2024 meeting of the Smithfield Town Council Committees. First time we'll have public comments. First person speaking is at the table. Could you state your name for the record, please?
Philip Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards.
Ben Church Boulevard, Smithfield.
Thank you for your understanding.
Absolutely. I guess my point in general is to this group and the public at large is obviously we were talking about the Turner Drive improvements or whatever. And my property is one of the largest pieces left in the town, or that end of town, that would fall under that half-mile radius. So we get pulled into that plan. As I've seen it in the paper, is the only really information I have on that. So I guess my point on traffic and who pays for traffic and development, I guess ever since we ran the Native Americans out of this part of the world, every house, every person contributes to traffic. If you get in a motor vehicle and drive, or it comes to your house, or something's delivered to your house, or Amazon comes, or trucks that haul everything to your resources, grocery stores, whatever. Traffic is all of our issues. Obviously, development over time, the rate of change has changed, right? It's gotten faster over time. But it's a community issue. The traffic that's up there, and I don't know all the studies, I've heard a few things. A good part of the traffic that's up there on Benchurch Boulevard near Turner Drive and in front of my house, they say 75% of that between now and 2029 already exists. 80-some hundred people in the town of Smithfield, 35,000 cars pass my driveway every day. Most of that traffic is transient traffic. It's not Smithfield traffic. There's some going to some of our developments, and it has gotten greater. But a lot of that's from traffic going into Surrey, Southampton, Sussex, broader sections of Isle of Wight. So we're kind of a flow-through area. And obviously there's been a lot of development in there. I get that. Who's going to pay for that? I hope that everybody that lives in Moonfield and Pagan Pines and Magruder Boulevard and Wilson Road and every other place and every part in this county is happy to pay for that traffic. That's where that traffic has come from. There's not a house built up there on this new area we're talking about yet, and we have a traffic problem. So, one of the comments on the money. You have an opportunity to pick up some of the money, maybe that's a good thing to do, because planning ahead, I heard some comments right over here, but planning ahead, the water deal, those other things, if you have an opportunity to get a little bit of money in to go towards that, obviously you're going to take on the burden or the responsibility of paying for the road. But maybe you do, maybe it does make sense to get some of that money in now to help offset that if you're going to do it anyway. If it's coming anyway and it's cheaper to do it now, I'm not advocating for that. It's just a process of thinking through that. It's going to get more expensive down the road as some projects you've talked about. I know I'm killing time and rambling here, but I don't really think it's a developer's responsibility to take care of the traffic on our public roads. Roads inside the developments, getting on and off the public roads, Cypress Creek put overpass up to get on and off of a limited access highway onto their development. They incurred that expense, and that was their responsibility. Made perfect sense at the time, and it worked for their development. Turner Drive is not going to help me a whole lot. I don't have any development plans right now. I hope it doesn't even happen in my lifetime, but at some point in time it may. It may be next week. The Pomoco piece came from 21 years ago when my father was approached to, somebody wanted to do a light kind, wanted to do the Pomoco, wanted a car lot there. He had no interest in it. He found out after the fact that a property adjacent to us on another farm was getting ready to get sold to a developer. He went in there and they got their hands on that property in a light kind exchange. It saved 223 acres of county land because they got rid of 77.35 acres. You never know when that opportunity is going to be there. I don't necessarily want to be saddled with the responsibility of these roads. Now, there may be some kind of reasonable sharing of that. I'm not opposed to all, participation. That's not my point. But anyway, so I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm sorry I came in last minute, but that's just kind of my thoughts on everything.
Always welcome.
Thank you,
Mr.
sir.
Edwards. Anyone else wish to be heard, public comments? Okay, is there any need, either Mr. Stallings or Mr. Riddick for a closed session?
We will, and
Yeah.
for real estate, specifically the Pinewood Heights development, and I'll defer to council on whether you want to do that now or at the end of the meeting. It's just to talk about the potential sale of lots in there, so council can have that discussion around prices.
Well, we always,
I would just say, we don't know how long that's gonna take. I would just suggest go ahead and get this done, get your committee meetings done, and then we can go to closed session.
okay, but that, the only thing I'll say is that goes contrary to what I always promised, we'd have closed session first, but as long as we understand that we're just gonna be talking about that, and what's the council's pleasure?
Can we do it before the council meeting on Wednesday?
We could.
If, that would keep it at the beginning.
Yep. Is that okay, Bill?
Yeah. that's fine.
Okay,
That'll be fine.
that's what we'll do. We got a lot on a committee
Yep.
day as well to begin with, so we'll do that closed session at the beginning. Leslie, if you would, put that on the agenda, for Wednesday. Okay, Public Safety Committee, operational updates. Chairman Collins, Gibbs, and Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. And with that, I'll go and open up the Public Safety Committee and start off with a report from Chief Howell.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of council.
Good afternoon, Chief.
You have in your packet our activity report for the previous month, the month of September. I'd be happy to answer any questions pertaining to that report, if there are any. In recent weeks, within the last 2 weeks, there's been some activity, some criminal activity as it relates to a shooting in Jersey Park Apartments. We've responded to the shooting. We were able to make an arrest. One person went to the hospital, and one person, the one that was arrested, received several charges. A couple days later, we also responded to the Hearns Trailer Park in reference to a stabbing. As a result, one person was injured, went to the hospital. We were able to make an arrest on that as well. So, as recent criminal activity, we have made two recent felony arrests as it relates to those crimes. As we've been talking about traffic, some of you may have received some complaints in reference to the traffic and the flow of traffic, or the lack thereof, after the homecoming parade. We realized early on that that was going to be problematic with traffic after the homecoming parade due to the day and due to the hour. And we worked through that as best as we could to alleviate the traffic congestion in the downtown area. There's also been some concern about future traffic as it relates to the homecoming parade. We have met recently. We don't think now there's going to be traffic. One of the things we plan to do is to educate the public prior to the homecoming parade. Christmas parade as much as possible. The Christmas parade is on a Saturday morning. We don't think it's going to have the same amount of impact as the homecoming parade did because of the date and the time. On that homecoming parade was a Friday evening at 4 o'clock, which is rush hour. Christmas parade is going to be on a Saturday morning on December the 14th, so we don't think it's going to be the same impact. We've worked with tourism, spoken with tourism, and they plan to limit the number of patrons in the parade to help alleviate some of the participations, reducing the parade. In the past, what has happened, the head of the parade has met the tail of the parade, and we have looked at measures to curtail that as well, to try to keep the parade moving as quickly and as safely as possible so that we do not have any accidents as it pertains to the patrons attending the parade. We hope to, with the efforts that we've taken thus far, it will eliminate some of the concerns, some of the traffic congestion, and we'll be able to get the traffic moving a lot further. One of the other additional things that we've done, we plan to reach out to VDOT and speak with them concerning the traffic light, changing the cycle of the traffic light. we've discovered that allowing the traffic light to cycle in a mannerism, when we've requested an extension of the light cycle, it works the traffic quicker, more efficiently than having an officer in the intersection. Part of the reasoning is more people are parking on the west side of town, and so we're having to still place officers there to ensure that the pedestrian traffic can cross Highway 10 safely. But we do plan to allow the light to try to cycle the traffic and get it out a lot quicker. It has been our experience from some of the recent activity that we've been able to observe. Those are some of the things, some of the steps that we've taken thus far as it relates to the traffic. I would like to back up and speak more in reference to the shooting in Jersey Park Apartments. We've noticed some deficiencies with TM Associates. We plan to send a letter to management concerning some of those issues that we've noted, i.e. portions of the fence being down, the cameras not properly working, and things of that nature, and see what their response is going to be. If we don't get a sufficient response, then we will ramp it up in reference to our efforts to get them to expedite and taking corrective action to those things that we've noted. Hopefully, they will correct those items quickly, and we will not have any further issues or concerns. I'd be more than happy to answer any of council's questions as it relates to anything in the operational updates.
The only one I want to offer, Chief, is a comment and a kudos, because I went through your activity report, and year over year from September, you're up anywhere from 40 to 100% in every activity, except for accidents, you're down 2%. So you guys are extremely busy. I just wanted to offer some kudos that it is noticed that, you know, everything you just mentioned, you also have all these other tasks that are going on in the department. So increasing activities makes everyone a little more busy. So appreciate the effort.
Yes, sir, definitely. I would also like to share with council that November the 9th, we have one of our local officers that's been nominated for the top cop, and that officer is Sergeant Alan Lester. They will be recognized in Virginia Beach on November the 9th. In years past, council has attended that, and so it's going to be November 9th. Major, what was the... I know it's the 9th at 6:30, and the hotel, I believe, is going to be the Westin in Virginia Beach. But I will make sure that we will send out an email to members of council, and I would ask that if you all intend to attend that activity, is to let us know so we can make sure we have adequate tables. Right now, we only have one table, and this morning I asked to get a head count as to how many of the police staff will be going, so that we know what our numbers look like. If we need to get another table, years past, council has purchased a second table.
Good. You get it?
Couple
Get
questions,
that information
Chairman,
right.
if
Yes.
I could.
Yes, sir.
The shooting that you had, isolated incident, kind of a domestic
Yes, sir.
related type thing, no hint whatsoever of anything other than a bad beef?
That's correct, sir.
The stabbing that you had, similar circumstances?
Yes, sir,
Yeah, I
definitely.
just want to make sure we get it out there that that's what it is, and, you know, from experience, those things, you can try all you want to, you can't prevent those. They're just hard. I just want to make sure we got through there. The Christmas parade, I know on fireworks, y'all reversed the traffic flow going out of town after the fireworks were over with.
Yes, sir, we
Do you
did.
see any benefit in doing that for the Christmas parade, or is it a totally different scenario, or?
A totally different scenario, and as it we looked at it, we talked about it to see if it was feasible. If we were to attempt to reverse the traffic, it's going to take away from our staffing that we will have, because every intersection is covered during the Christmas parade to ensure that the safety, no vehicular traffic encroach upon the patrons. As I stated previously, on the intersection of Main and Highway 10, we're having to staff more officers there because of the pedestrian traffic. Looking at reversing the traffic would not be a benefit. If anything, it would be more of a hindrance, Because if we were to reverse the traffic, depending on the time that we reverse the traffic on the bridge, everyone is going to be looking to get into downtown. And if we reverse the traffic, depending on the time, it will cause gridlock.
That's what I think. If you had nighttime versus during the middle of the day, I get it.
Yes, sir.
Just make sure. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Thank you, Chief, appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Smith, Assistant Chief?
Good afternoon, members of Town Council. Jeff Smith, Assistant Chief of Smithfield Volunteer Fire Department. We had 82 active calls in August, 66 in September. This time of the year, everybody's turning the heat on. We've had numerous structure fires in our area. 2 or 3 of them out of our area. We assist other jurisdictions, but also we've been working with the prevention for the school system. We have right many this year because of all the little preschools and everything. So also we're going to be out on Halloween night at our downtown fire station giving out candy. Welcome to stop by anytime y'all want to come to a drill, meet us on the first Monday of the month. Y'all welcome to stop by and see. Just let me know. I'll make sure we have a good drill lined up for y'all if y'all want to come out and check us out.
Go feed us.
We can.
They eat good.
Exactly.
If y'all have any questions for me?
Any questions? No, sir. Appreciate your efforts as well.
I bet we're gonna get a baseball game.
He's gonna, yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
Prompt.
I do apologize. I do have 2 things. This coming Saturday, the Smithfield Police Department will be,
Having a softball match.
yes, as Jeff and I are sitting here side by side, shoulder to shoulder, on that Saturday, we'll be frenemies because it will be a rival game, and we know that Smithfield Blue, meaning the police department, will be victorious in those softball game. But one thing I would like to also add is the Safe Halloween. I received an email today from a concerned citizen as it relates to the traffic, the time the roads are being shut down, and the school. In years past, if there's a school bus that's trying to drop off on Main Street, we have made accommodations to ensure that the school bus can drop off, so there would not be any issues with the school buses trying to get down Main Street to drop off their students. So I do want to just share that for the general public. Thank you.
But the fireman's going to win.
That was smooth. Any other questions?
Yeah, Chairman.
Yes.
I've had a couple of citizens ask me about the closure. Chief, you may want to stay here.
Okay.
It may pertain to you.
Yeah.
About the street closures on Main and Grace for Halloween.
Yes, sir.
And they've asked why or could they have a look at Mason and Institute or Institute Street being closed as well. I told them I didn't know, but I would at least put it forth to you guys to give us a reason to or not to.
When you speak of Institute, you're speaking of Institute between Main and Grace? Yes, sir. When we close down Main Street and Grace Street, the only vehicular traffic that will be allowed is the post office employees, town employees will be able to leave using those routes. Other than that, it should not be any vehicular traffic on the section of Institute between Main and, well, actually on Institute Street, period, because where we shut down Grace Street, there should not be any vehicular traffic.
Great. And then when you go towards Mason, that's pretty much the only way out. So it's going to be residents.
Yes, sir. In years past, if someone is trying to get home, we've had an officer to actually escort them if there's a true need to get home. But we are hoping that through advertisement, that people that live along those corridors will make the necessary adjustments so they don't have to be there. Sometimes there is an anomaly, and we try to accommodate them as best we can.
It works pretty good.
Yeah, agreed. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Jeff?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I thought you were asking me a question.
Is the game to the floor?
He wants to know how many points are we gonna beat them by,
And what was the answer?
to be determined.
Don't get involved in online betting, that's gonna be trouble.
Any other questions? Thank you both, appreciate it.
Thank y'all. Have a nice day.
Mr. Carroll from the Volunteer Rescue Squad?
I don't see
I don't see
Brian.
him.
He's out of town.
He's out of town?
Okay.
He got married? Well, that's just good.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Any other,
Anybody would do anything to keep coming kind of to a council meeting, but anyway.
any other questions or comments for public safety? Seeing none, I'll close Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance Committee members, Chairman Pack, Councilman Smith, and Vice Mayor Butler. Mr. Pack.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. At this time, I'd like to open the Finance Committee, and we are going to start off, Ms. Ross, with our September financial statements.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of Town Council. The financial package, I'll go over that real quick and talk about revenue collected to date, is $1,438,164, and that's on page 4. This is 12.82% of the budgeted amount. That is $9.7 million. The personal property is due on December the 5th, and I'll talk about that later in my presentation. $624,812 of the overall revenue collected to date was local tax revenue, and of that, the largest is the meals tax of $282,000. Sales tax was $103,000, which is tracking to pretty much normal. $341,360 of that revenue came from use of money and property, which is on page 3. $255,981 was general fund interest, and $41,250 is from Smithfield Center rentals. Expenses to date are $2.577941, and that's 21% of expenses, which is in line percentage-wise with the prior year. Overall, expenditures are budgeted at $10,257,000. Again, I will be scheduling the expenditure meetings for the department heads the second week. I'll start scheduling them the second week in November. Most of the departments are in line with their budget. There's only a couple that are close to 25%, but we need to just go ahead and start planning with that. We'll jump in and start talking about debt. Outstanding debt as of the end of September is $4,058,348. The series payments for the 2020 A2 and 2020 A1 bonds were due in October. They've already been paid in September, and that's reflected in the financial statements. The next due dates for all of those are April the 1st of 25. The loan, as you know, the loan that was a rollover from the prior note is due each month, and that's about $18,000. The vac truck will be paid for. The last payment will be $825.24, and that will be $99,000, and it will be paid off as of that. That's all I have to talk about the financial statements. You ready to talk about the cash balances?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay,
Unless
great.
there's some questions on
Just
financials, we'll
wonder,
take
how many years did it take us to pay the vac truck off?
3 or 4.
3 or 4?
5, I think.
Was it really 5?
Yeah, I think it was about 5.
Okay.
Yep.
Time flies.
It'll be doing. So let's
Thank you.
see. You're welcome. So cash balance is I will talk about the investment report real quick. Let's see, the 9/30 return on all the investments are $103,047, and out of that, $68,000 were looter funds, and the rest were town funds. Let's see if I have a breakdown now. Okay. I redid the cash balances report because we talked about it and I just didn't think it tracked and told you a lot about what you needed to see. I put the funds at the very top of the cash balances are funds that we can use. At the bottom, it says only for purpose indicated, and I'll talk about what all the bank accounts are. We have a lot, but we're going to change some of those as we talked about when we're going to do the new bank accounts. So at the very top of all the funds, if we had to go and spend money today, we have $21 million that we have. Out of that, $4 million are either between funds. So actually, if we had to go and write a check right now, it's $16 million. And that includes all the investments, all the bank accounts. That
How
does
much?
not, 16 million. Yep. The purpose indicated are at the lower part, and those are, I'm going to go over each one of these accounts, so if anybody falls asleep, just let me know. Okay. The general fund, where bills are paid. The cash flow investor, which is the second line down, that's the investment money market. Payroll, that's what it stands for. Pinewood Heights, we need to close that because we're really not using that anymore. We need to figure out where the funds are. Windsor Castle, 0. The water department is water department expenses. Water deposit are water deposits into the account. Sewer department expenses. Highway fund, highway expenses. Now, the restricted funds are going to be moved into an investment account. They don't have a lot of activity right now where they currently are. They just mostly have interest, which fluctuates between different accounts. Sometimes we earn 0.05%, and sometimes we earn about 0.03%. So the water development escrow, that account is where pro rata funds go into, and there's not much activity in that account. The water debt service, separate account for debt service fees, and there's not much activity other than interest. Water treatment plant escrow is for the RO plant, not much activity. Water capital escrow for projects, again, not much activity. Sewer development escrow, pro rata funds, not much activity. Sewer compliance, fees charged, the fees that are charged on billing deposits are made into this account. Sewer cap escrow for projects. Any account? Any questions on that?
No, this is so much easier to read than
Good.
the last time.
Oh,
You just-
good.
Like I said, it's left to right, you can read down to it, it's
Yes, sir.
very well done.
Thank you. I'm going to try to make it graphic, but we'll work on that next time. Let's see. I just wanted to go over a little bit. The earnings for Looter for the year-to-date are $77,000. And the Looter earnings since they have been invested with us are $101,764. Let's see. And that's all I have with regards to that. Okay, we'll talk about the personal property taxes. They were mailed out. Out of that, $1,683,260 in bills. The number of bills were 6,786. I put in a fake bill so that we could see how long it took from the time they mailed them till the time we got it. I wasn't quite sure how long it takes, where it goes. It goes through Richmond, where it goes through, so we'll find out about that. They'll be due, they're mailed out, so the citizens have 38 days to pay them, and again, they're due December the 5th. We did have some issues with the file. As you all know, we get a file from the county. Our first file was blank, so you have to go through that and then go back and ask for another one. The second file was corrupted. The third one had duplicates in it, and the fourth one was finally okay, but it had to be reworked. So that puts a delay behind everything. And it's not because we're not on Munis, because everybody that has an extract from the county has to be that. Windsor didn't have the same issues that we have, but they also have to get a file from the Isle of Wight
Come from the treasurer's office or commissioner's office?
Commissioner's office.
Thank you.
Their IT department, yeah, it comes from them. My staff and I attended a Treasurers Association of Virginia conference last week, and we learned a couple things that we need to start working on, and auditors will probably bring this up at one point. We need to work on our internal controls procedures. Refunds, we need to make that more timely and every month, but I don't think we make it every month. We make it when we get around to it. And if you all get a chance to look at our website under the payments portal, you can look up your property out there, but you have to have your name, and because real estate's public, and you should be able to look it up, but you can't, because you have to know the person's name that lives at that property. So we're going to work on that so that You don't have to know the person's name. You can look it up by parcel ID or by address. I know a lot of requests come in, FOIA requests, and I was talking to the other localities, and they were saying that what they tell people to do, if you have a question about a property, go out and look at the website, rather than have us have to fill all that out. So, that's all I have.
Any questions for Ms. Ross? Thank you. Appreciate all you do.
Thank you.
Bet.
All right, moving on, we have some appropriation of ARPA funds. This gets a little show gamey, so I'm gonna leave this to Michael to tell us what's going on here.
All right. There are going to be two words that I need you to remember. One's obligated, one's allocated. As we have gone through the use of our ARPA dollars, council has allocated those dollars to specific projects. We've then gone and entered contracts, spent those dollars to those projects. The end of this calendar year, the guidelines around ARPA money requires you to have all your dollars obligated. Now, in the definition that they use for obligated, that means either under contract, under subaward, or actually spent. So we have some dollars that we have allocated to projects, but they aren't under contract. So Treasurer's Department staff has been working with our auditors to make sure that we stay in compliance with our federal guidelines. And so the recommendation that they have for us is that we take our remaining unspent ARPA dollars, which currently is $3,646,355, that we appropriate those into this year's fiscal year budget. We can then spend those down and have them obligated by the end of the year. We currently have just over $1.3 million in projects under contract that will meet that obligation requirement. And that leaves us with just under $2.3 million left to have obligated by the end of the year. We can use those to fund payroll for the first half of our calendar or fiscal year, which is permissible under our lost revenue claim that we made. That would then get us completely obligated by the end of the fiscal year. What that does is it allows us to take those monies that we had already budgeted for payroll and use them to finish funding our ARPA projects that haven't been completed yet. So it doesn't remove those ARPA projects that council's already allocated money to. It just changes the funding scenario to make sure we're compliant with the federal guidelines around the ARPA money. Now, that may be a little complicated, but there's a resolution in your packet that would appropriate those funds into the budget and make the appropriate budget amendment. In that way, we can submit our paperwork by the end of the year saying we have obligated all of our funds and actually exhausted those funds because we will have spent them on our payroll for the first half of the fiscal year. All of our allocated projects that we've been doing and tracking with ARPA money will still continue just as they would have before. They'll just be funded with surplus funds from the fiscal year that we didn't spend on payroll. Yes, sir.
And then how are you locking them in place? How are you, the money that's ARPA spent, how are you locking them in place to make sure that they're spent only on those projects?
We are tracking that internally. I track that as well as Jay in our Treasurer's Department. He and I are tracking that both, and he sends me the ARPA related expenditures each month. I put them in my spreadsheet and send them back, and he verifies that they match his numbers. So right now, we still have about $500,000 that council has not allocated to any projects. So we still have some money left we can allocate to projects, but as we spend down the rest of it, we are tracking that internally, again, between my office and the treasurer's office.
Thank you.
Any questions on this? I know it's kind of funny, but
That makes sense.
if we don't do this, we're going to have to wind up returning ARPA funds and just bookkeeping.
And I know we discussed that before. So is this a new ruling by the IRS?
Well, it's through their federal guidelines. What we did, and the guidelines allowed anybody who received less than $10 million to declare up to that amount as lost revenue. And that got you out of a lot of the reporting requirements because you used that as a standard declaration. However, that did not remove the obligation requirements, which seems kind of contradictory, but there's parts of the guidelines that seem to contradict each other. So working with the auditors, this is the most conservative approach to make sure we are compliant with every piece of their requirements. But it does seem to question why give you an allocation for lost revenue if then you're still going to make you do other pieces with it. But we're just dotting our I's and crossing our T's.
But if you get right down to it, it's taking it off of their books.
Right.
That's I think, is that pretty close? Yeah.
And several other localities around us, especially the smaller ones, have taken a similar approach and just allocated the money into their budget to fund payroll and then used it to continue funding those projects. And it gives us a longer timeline on those projects as well.
Because the money's technically spent. That money is spent. That's what they're concerned about, is zeroing out that account and
That's right.
move along. Works for me, as long as it's lawful legal.
And again, it's been run through the auditors and they blessed it, and that's where this came from.
Any questions on these funds? Hearing none, we will move on. We have 4 invoices in excess of $20,000, which will require authorization. The first 2 are to Athens Building Corporation for payment number 3 and 4 on Luter Sports Complex. Payment 3 is for $119,996.09. Payment 4 is $104,111.02. We have our Alouette County IT service for the first part of the year, $40,500 for the shared service. And then to Lewis Construction for some work done on the Cedar and Cedar Lane, Drummond's Lane storm pipe repair, $36,000. Any concerns or questions on these bills?
Pay the bills.
Hearing none, we'll send these to council for consideration on the consent agenda. Anything else to come before finance? Hearing none, we will close the finance committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next is Public Buildings and Welfare. Members, Vice Mayor Butler, Councilman Collins, and Councilman Pack. Vice Mayor.
The first thing on the agenda is a zoning ordinance amendment. Tanner?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. This is a staff-initiated text amendment to the entrance corridor overlay. This is exempting detached single-family dwellings and accessory structures from requiring entrance corridor overlay review by the Planning Commission. This was favorably recommended by the Planning Commission to Town Council at the October meeting. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Can you explain the purpose of the, why, what was the impetus of this? Why?
We just wanted to make clarifying language because it has always been the intent for the Planning Commission that single-family detached dwellings would not come before them for review. For example, if someone wanted to change the color on their front door, their trim, if they would fall under the entrance corridor, the 500 feet, we didn't want to have to bring detached single-family dwellings to Planning Commission. It's really designed to more focused on the commercial. We do have the instances of attached single-family dwellings, for example, the Wilson Road townhouses. When they wanted to erect a fence, we did bring that project before Planning Commission for their review and approval for entrance corridor overlay.
Thank you. Makes sense.
The second thing on the agenda is an update from VDOT on Gray Street project.
All right.
Town manager.
Tammy, you could grab Mr. Bowman. VDOT is here, and Mr. Bowman, one of our local representatives, is here to brief council on the Gray Street project. As you may recall, this was delayed slightly so that VDOT could come in and regrade some of the curb and gutter to address some of the stormwater issues that we have along the corridor. So Mr. Bowman is going to brief council on that and let you know where that is.
Good afternoon. George Bowman with the Department of Transportation. I'm just here to give you a real brief overview of the Gray Street Drainage Project. I've talked extensively with a few people, but today I just wanted to go over a couple points with you and also try to give you a couple things that I'm seeing that may be a point of concern that I may need council's help with. As of right now, we've had the hydraulic design come back, and I've got a clean copy for you. without the overlay. But in that study, it was determined that we can get the drainage off of Gray Street and take it down to James Street where we have an existing outfall ditch. So what we'll be doing is we'll be taking up approximately about 600 feet of curb and gutter and certain portions of sidewalk that we need to repair while we're there. And we're going to be installing 7 new DI drainage structures along Gray Street and down James Street to take the water from Gray Street and put it down to the outfall ditch that we have currently on James Street. The plan right now, and this is part of what I wanted to speak to you about, is we're looking at the week after election as a beginning start date for this project. I am aware of all of the dates that you have coming up, the Christmas parade and everything, and I can assure you that if we move forward with that date, there will be no interruptions in any of the town's activities. We will not be working on the street, and we will not have anything open that will cause a conflict to any of the parades or any of the events. So during construction, we'll have a flagging operation mostly for the sidewalk and the curb and gutter work. So the traffic will not be impeded too much. We'll try to keep our work zone close to the drainage structures. We will have a one-day period where we're going to take the drainage across Gray Street to James Street, and we'll have to do possibly a detour that day. But it's going to be on the right-hand side of that, so we can still allow one lane to be open and let people get down to James Street. But we're hoping to minimize all of the impacts because of the traffic in that area. A couple of the concerns that I have that I really wanted to bring to your attention is there is one particular tree that is along Gray Street in front of the Christian Outreach Center that is in my scope of work, that in order for me to correct the curb and gutter and the sidewalk there, that tree really needs to come out. I know that these trees are very loved in the community. The second concern that I have is really with all 8 trees that are in front of the Outreach Center. Once we do the FDR, which is scheduled now to start in the 2026 pavement schedule, once we do that, that FDR project is going to go down in the ground about 2 feet. And when we go down in the ground 2 feet, all of the root base that is along that road is going to get damaged. I had our roadside manager come in and look at the trees, and he is determined and asked me to express that once we kill the root base of those trees, some of them are already starting to have issues in the canopy. They're going to die. So it'll just be a matter of, he estimates about 2 years before those trees actually die and then to become a safety issue. I'm really proposing to try to take those trees out ahead of these 2 projects. I know that it's not very favorable because they're beautiful trees. I don't want to take them out, but I assure you that once we do both of these projects, those trees are going to die because we're going to cut down into the root base. So that was a big purpose that I asked Mr. Stalling to let me come talk to everybody. One was to tell you we're almost there. I actually am getting all of the drainage structures delivered to our Smithfield area headquarters on the 31st. So we have all of the material finally. That was the first hiccup that we ran into. Procurement is always fun. It took me a while to get the material, but we've achieved that now, and I'm working to get that schedule solidified, but I wanted to give you the opportunity and give the public the opportunity to hear what our plan is.
Matt, one thing we did discuss too, the work, we indicated that we would try to have the work done by 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so we don't have any work going on during that rush hour, given the bridge is closed.
Correct.
And so we did identify that, and DDOT is going to include that in the scope of work.
Well, it sounds to me like they've done due diligence and even gone above and beyond that. I mean, what bothers me is when somebody shows up and first thing you know, just cutting the trees down, we don't know anything about it. They haven't done their due diligence. They do it as a matter of it being more convenient, easier for them. Sounds like to me this gentleman's indicating that he understands the way we feel about our trees here, and you would rather not take them down, but I've got a pine tree that was struck by lightning. I blacktopped my driveway, and the first thing you know, my nice blacktop driveway is buckling. I get it. It does, so. Anyway.
And one question. Is there any plan to replant any type of, anything there at all?
So part of our
Other than
meeting,
grass?
part of our meeting that we had several weeks ago, we were talking about working in conjunction with the Development Committee.
I've been approached by some of the citizens along the corridor, some of the folks that have been part of Historic Smithfield, about trying to do some beautification work in conjunction with this project. So that is something that we'll be looking at as this project, as well as the full-on repaving project happens, is trying to do some beautification work along the corridor that may include plantings and work on the sidewalk.
Good, thank you.
I'm looking at the street view here on Google Maps. Across the street from here, there is no curb, no gutter, goes straight into a parking lot. Is there no ability for us to move the drainage to the other side of the street so we don't have to touch these trees?
Well, the drainage is not going to be the problem when they do the FDR and they cut down into the sub base. They're going to cut the root base, and anything within the 5-foot radius of the base of that tree, when they cut down into the base with the FDR, it's going to kill the radius. The 5-foot radius is going to be touched, and that's what is ultimately going to kill the trees. The first tree at the entrance on the right-hand side, looking into the outreach center, that's the only one in my scope of project. So I've taken on the responsibility to correct the drainage. Our pavement side is going to take care of the pavement, but we're working together. We halted the pavement because we wanted to fix the drainage issues beforehand. We didn't want to go in with that big project. And, so for me, for my side, even though I represent all of VDOT, the first phase is that first tree on the right-hand side of the driveway is what would affect me. But all of the rest of them, even that first one, once we do the FDR, they're all, the root base is going to be damaged.
And you saying the FDR is when you remove the surfaces there, you go down 2 feet and come back with new road bed and whatnot?
Yeah.
And but, yeah, because they're sitting right on the curb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately they are.
Well, it's also destroyed the sidewalk along there too.
It is.
Buckling it.
And I mean, we do not, it's not my first choice to go in and take those down. I wish we had a way around them, but I just want to be proactive and forewarn you that once we do the FDR, they're going to die.
So as a community, I mean, if this were a private citizen would say, you can take a tree down, but you got to put back 2 or 3, I forget exactly what our statutes are. Can we go on the other side of the sidewalk with maybe Christians Outreach permission and replant new trees of similar species? I mean, that would be a town council thing. I don't know where your right-of-way stops and where town is, because the trees are planted right between the sidewalk and the curb and gutter, which is a small spot. Now that the trees are big, they weren't always that big.
As I mentioned, we're going to look at the entire corridor, and it may be something different, like the crepe myrtles or what have you that are already along the corridor, so something smaller that won't grow that large. So we are looking at some beautification that may happen during or after the total project.
It won't have a root structure that we may end up doing.
It doesn't look like we have a whole lot of choice here. It's either fix the roads and the drainage or lose the trees, and that's not a...
And may lose the trees anyway.
You got one that looks like it's sick anyhow.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I would rather take them down in a controlled environment rather than our guys get called out in the middle of the night once the root base dies and we get a windstorm and they blow over and potentially fall on somebody. And I don't say that as a scare tactic. I say that's a great possibility. And if we can take them down in a controlled environment, then I've got a lot more ability to control what.
Sounds like you've been there, done that.
Yes.
Well, as a council, I hate to see this come down. I think we all do. But let's quickly move to put something back in its place. I mean, old trees in an old community certainly add a lot to the value of the community, the appearance was.
We'll work with VDOT to make sure that we do it in a manner that doesn't wind up harming them and when it makes sense in the project, given the full depth reclamation they're doing, we may have to wait until somewhere further along in the project, but we will commit to putting something back when it's practical.
Madam Chair, one other question since we have the gentleman here. I know it's not, normally have Gotham here, but how's the South Church Street Bridge coming?
Good, they're actually getting ready to give a release. We had an inquiry by the town paper, so that will be forthcoming. I think that it was just finally approved, so I don't want to speak before that comes out, because I think
Okay.
that's getting ready to come out, but I can off the record say it's going good.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, as a resident of Gray Street, I sincerely appreciate you being here with the update. You have 4 people sitting behind you, all residents of Gray Street as well. And I don't know if they knew exactly what was going on, but if the trees got to go, they got to go. And I think that I think it's a no-brainer. If they need to come out, you have thought it through very, very well, and I appreciate the attention to the historic nature of the trees being there, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all.
Any more conversation?
Thank you.
Thank you. And we also have the speed study update for Cary Street.
Yes, ma'am. As you remember, we engaged Mr. Bailey and his consulting firm to come in and do a speed study along Cary Street. After we did initial data gathering, we looked at options and we implemented those speed display signs that are out there. They have since gone out and regathered data on the corridor, and tonight they'll present those findings and what the outcome was of that work. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Stallings. Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Mike Bailey. I'm with Grove Slate Associates. I'm here to report, as Mike said, on the Cary Street speed study findings. I know you've already seen some of this information. I was here a couple months ago to talk about what we had done to date. So I want to recap just for the sake of anyone who may not have been here for that. So we'll do a quick recap, and at the end I'll open it up to questions if you have any. We met earlier this year excuse me, with residents along the Cary Street corridor. We're defining that as effectively from Gray Street to the town limits, Mill Swamp Road. The biggest concern that we heard was speeding along the corridor, so the first thing we did was do data collection. You can see on the screen there are 2 red circles with lines. Those represent approximately the areas that we collected the speed data. Location 1 is sort of halfway between Gray Street and what I'll call the property line for the Luter YMCA. And then location 2 is halfway between the Luter YMCA driveway and Goose Hill Way. The findings, so this is the original findings for location 1. This is more the toward town, inside of the residential or more residential area. I should mention, as everybody probably knows, but the entirety of the corridor is posted 30 miles an hour through there. So we found the 85th percentile speed, which means that's a common measurement that we use, the state uses, and the FHWA uses as well. That means 85% of the vehicles are traveling at that speed or less. So we found the 85th percentile speed over the course of the week to average 32.3 miles an hour. So there wasn't really a speeding issue from the data perspective closer to Gray Street. We did find, however, closer to on the other side of the YMCA, closer to the town limits, that there was an elevated speed of 42.5 miles per hour. Again, for both locations, we did tube counts. Those are the black tubes that you'll see across the asphalt section that collect that speed data. And we did it for a solid week, so that way we had a nice body of data sets. As part of that, we made recommendations. We looked at a host of different things we could do for traffic calming. The top one that you see there that's outlined in red, the pole-mounted speed display sign, is what was ultimately chosen for that corridor to try to combat some of the speeds. We typically, with that, expect to see a speed reduction of approximately 5 miles per hour. And the town was kind enough to get those in very quickly. So we waited a little over a month to make sure that traffic normalized. It's not a new pattern, but we just felt it was a best practice to let everyone sort of be familiar with that signage, the new location, those things. And we went back out and we collected speed data again. The second set of speed data was collected at the same locations approximately, so it was an apples to apples comparison. This is location 1, again closer to the Gray Street side of the corridor. There's effectively no change, and I do have charts that have the comparison head to head, but I just want to go over the independent data now. So we saw again around 32 miles an hour at that location. We saw a substantial reduction in speed as people were coming in or leaving town on the other side of the Luter YMCA. If you recall, it was approximately 42 miles an hour. We saw about a 10 mile an hour reduction at 32.4 miles per hour. So this would be location 1. The sort of top row, if you will, that's the pre-sign installation, the data per day. Northbound and southbound. When I showed that picture, I should have mentioned something, but when I showed the corridor, it looked east-west. That's just because of the length of the corridor to fit the slide. So it would be, what we'll call sheet west is north, leaving town. Southbound would be coming into town. So you see the pre-sign installation, post-sign installation data, and then at the bottom, there's the delta between the two. So effectively no change between Grace and the Luter YMCA. There wasn't an issue to start with, is what we found. A net difference of 0.3 miles per hour on the 85th percentile speed. And we had a little over, same layout, pre-sign installation, post-sign installation, the difference. Over the course of the week, we saw a reduction of 10.1, roughly 10 miles per hour between Mill Swamp Road town limits and the Luter YMCA. And at this point, I'd be glad to take any questions you may have.
And while it's worth noting that when we initially kicked this off, we invited all the residents of Cary Street up and down Grace to come out, and we did an initial listening session. Before this meeting tonight, we sent that same group of individuals an invitation to attend tonight, indicating also that Mike and I would stay after the meeting to address any questions that come up. So we did invite all of those people who were initially invited to attend this evening so that they could see the information and hear the presentation as well.
Just for the record, I believe we sent out approximately 130 invitations, and those would represent households, not multiple mailings to the same household. Are there any questions?
I have a question. Is it your experience that delta stays 12, 18, 24 months from now, or do people get used to the sign and they see how high they can tack it up?
So that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up. That's one of the more important features of that sign is you can limit the display. It is not a drag strip, free radar indicator for somebody with a souped-up truck.
Line that goes across when it gets.
Yeah, it'll arrow out. I don't know if it's lines or if it blinks zeros or what have you, but there's an indication that it can record that data, but it will not display that to the driver because we don't want to encourage how fast can I go, right? Typically with these, you do see a slight creep up, usually 1 to 2 miles an hour over the course of several years, but there's nothing that would indicate that it wasn't successful and will remain successful.
Because it actually doubled the expectations in your.
It did. We're pleasantly surprised with it.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So unless there's other direction, I think, again, I was impressed with the results, and the data clearly shows that we're back down into the non-enforceable area with speed infractions. We'll maintain enforcement through law enforcement like we have historically, but unless there's direction otherwise, I don't know that any other traffic calming measures are warranted, but we'll take input and direction if somebody feels differently.
Well, I guess we can make that determination after the feedback that we hear tonight.
And we will, this will be on the website as well, so anybody that wants to have access to the data or the presentation, it'll be available as well.
Chairman? I would say it's fantastic to finally have all this data, and especially the 10-mile reduction is super. And we had talked over the years about the reduction in the actual speed limit on that road. And should we decide to do that, that's about the last thing that we could do, right. I would venture to say. So I don't think that that's still off the table, but my concerns have certainly been allayed with this study.
From a traffic engineering standpoint, it fixed the problem. The only thing you could do, and I can go back to that list, but the only other thing you could do beyond this, to be clear, this would not fix the problem. The problem is already fixed. I want to be very clear about that.
Sure.
But any other alternative thing that you would choose to put out there would be cost effective. You're basically going to change the geometry of the road to force people to slow down. There's no need shown by that. So it's been resolved as far as I can tell.
Yeah, but still, 35 miles an hour in between the Y and Gray Street is still awfully high.
It's 30.
Maybe 30.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
it's 30, and they're running approximately 32 by the data.
And in fact, based on your experience, if you were to reduce it to 25 miles an hour, the net reduction would be negligible, would it not?
I would agree. I also don't think that that particular section of corridor would be a good fit for 25, just giving the geometric characteristics of it. I think the way it currently is signed is appropriate. Anything else? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
And the last thing on the agenda is a lease renewal, 315 Main Street.
Yes, ma'am. As you may know, the town owns the building at 315 Main Street. It's currently occupied by When Pigs Fly. They currently lease that from us, and they have for some time. This is just a renewal of the lease that exists. Does increase the rent. The previous lease had a 2% increase built into it, and we have kept with that. So the new rate is the accumulation of those 2% increases over the life of the previous lease.
Michael, do you know the square footage of that building? Ballpark?
I do not off the top of my head, no, sir.
Very small.
We're looking,
Yeah.
I'm guessing
An
500,
outhouse.
500 square feet. I mean, do we think,
5 or 6, something like that.
Yeah, it's not a lot.
And-
She has more than 500 or 600 square feet of stuff in it.
yeah. Well, the reason I ask is typically when you're doing a real estate lease, you're looking at your square footage rate. And at 10,268, if it is indeed 500, you're looking at $20.53 a square foot, which is a very fair market rate. So the town, when you look at the $800 a month, you go, man, that's really low, but you're only dealing with 500 square feet. So I feel like we're in a fair market value on that property.
That's what you're having tax
It is
benefit.
worth noting that at some point in time in the future, the electrical system in that building will probably have to be renovated, and when that happens, she will have to vacate because it is full on, pull everything out to update it. So we're not having significant issues now, but that is something that we will have to tackle in the future.
I have a question, if I could, unrelated to the lease. I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
I have something too I want to
Oh, go ahead,
mention,
ma'am.
but go ahead, Jim.
No, go ahead. You started.
And in reference to the conversation that we had about the roundabout and possible growth, the observation that Randy made, and I know that there is a lot of chatter going around where citizens feel that we've haphazardly made decisions about subdivisions, and there is a concern about controlled growth. I've mentioned it to a couple of people that I serve with, and it is still a concern of mine. We did the comprehensive plan, but we've never really sat down as a town council to review that plan and look at the land use to determine where we want to grow. We've just approved a couple of large projects, and I won't say it's too late. As we see today from the roundabouts, Randy said if we do this enhancement on the road, developers can interpret that as being, Smithfield is making enhancements. They may be a good target for continued growth. But the question is, do we want the growth? Personally, I think that we need to sit down with staff and possibly planning to look at our comprehensive plan and the land use maps to determine, if we want growth out there, what kind of growth we want. And that's something that not during my term that we've ever done that. It's one of these situations where you talk about the cart before the horse or the chicken before the egg or whatever it is, and I think it's long overdue. And maybe one of the things that I'm a proponent of is the annual retreats that we don't have. And we've said that when new town council members come on board, that we will schedule one.
Yeah.
And I think that that'll be a great opportunity to do that then.
I was gonna say, we were gonna look to January, February timeframe to do something of that nature, and that's
Okay.
one of the topics.
Okay. Jim?
Because the comprehensive plan is due for a full review in '27, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. The question I had was unrelated to the lease, but the property 315, and Michael and I have talked about, and I think I just need to get buy-in from the council, if if anybody else would entertain this idea. That lot behind there, there's a grass lot. I know there's been some history of turning that in, or discussions about putting that into a parking lot to alleviate some of the parking downtown. But Michael tells me that it never went to a point to where we can understand the full cost of what that would be for drainage systems or whatever. It always stopped short. But would the town council entertain the idea of allowing Michael to take that to a point where we understand what it would cost to turn that into a full-fledged parking lot? Versus, I think you're doing under the 2,500 square foot.
He's referencing Joyner Field, and what we are doing right now is you can do an expansion of up to 2,500 square feet before you trip a lot of the land disturbance requirements. And so we are going to expand a little bit that parking lot, but to do a full-fledged municipal parking lot, the biggest cost I see is the stormwater. And so we would have to invest some money with an engineer to have that looked at. So we could do that if that was a path that council wanted to pursue.
And I'm making the case to just understand the cost, because it came back as a $10 million project. I'm the first one to say it's not worth it. But it came back as something reasonable that it would alleviate some of the parking downtown, then we could entertain that as a future capital improvement project. But not knowing the cost, you really just can't make a decision one way or the other. That's why I'm asking if people would entertain that and allow Michael to go down the road of, yes, spending a little bit of money for the engineer to figure out what the true cost of a parking lot is. Unless there is history out there that we've looked at this, that's never going to be a parking lot, it's a waste of time.
What's the cost to determine the cost?
I wouldn't be surprised if it's $10,000 to $20,000 to do engineering work to fully understand it. It may be less if we want just a high-level order of magnitude cost. I'm sure we can get a really high-level engineer's estimate, and then they would have to go further to narrow it down.
Didn't we also have some discussion at one time about doing something other than a parking lot? Like maybe if we were going to go out and do the engineering and design analysis, that's going to cost us, let's say $20,000. Why could we not do a combination study to have both in our hip pocket? Should we decide later on down the road, or before we even go the parking lot route, that we want to, build some office space, because it might come so we could basically do two things at one time for the same cost.
As a plan A and a plan B for that
Sure.
field?
With the same cost
Yeah.
for the
I
analysis.
think it's a good, if we're just doing the analysis part of it, I think it's a good idea.
Will we need consensus? Do we need,
I'll move forward.
anybody, any objections?
It's been talked about, what you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of some type of building there for office space.
For a number
plus
of
the
years.
parking. That's been talked about, but nothing has ever been pursued about it.
All right, see what we got there. If you find gold, we'll split it, huh? Yeah, right to the town treasury to Laura.
And then the other thing I'd like to point out, if we ever did anything, that building has got some historic value, regardless of how old everybody thinks it is.
Which one, you talking about, the one that we're leasing?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
So we need to get it somewhere.
Well,
Somebody needs to pick
I'm
it up and
sure
move
if it's
it.
got that kind of electricity in it, I'm sure it's got a historic value.
It's got big history.
Generally speaking, we don't have to do a lot of maintenance. We do some exterior maintenance several times a year, just with it being an older structure, but generally speaking, it's in pretty good shape.
They probably still change the fuses in it. I bet it doesn't have breakers.
Any more discussion? If not, we'll close public building.
Okay. The only thing I've got left is we'll have the minutes on the meeting agenda. Mr. Collins?
I have one more thing, I don't mean to be dominating, but Mr. Riddick, I'm getting a lot of questions on Cypress Creek proffers. You know, if we can get an update either
We
tonight
had
or at town council.
we had a meeting with the Cypress Creek developer, about a little bit more than a month ago. Shortly thereafter, he contacted me and said that he was trying, I mean, we had a very productive discussion about dealing with the things that are missing on the proffers. The last I heard, he was dealing with the HOA, the HOA and their legal counsel. I haven't heard another word from him in a couple of weeks. I'll try to get a.
That is not true. I can confirm to you 100% that is not true. He has not ever talked to the HOA since you met. The lawyer has not talked to his counsel. None
Jim,
of
why
those conversations ever happened.
don't we do this? Why don't you and Mr. Riddick have a discussion?
Okay, good.
Because from a legal perspective, here at this point, that would probably be a
Okay,
good
perfect.
thing.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Anybody have anything else? Thank you all for coming, ladies and gentlemen. Meeting adjourned.